honesty. When you say honesty, honesty. When you say honesty.
Yes, my people. Family, good afternoon and welcome to Reason with Rattigan with your host, Will, the Rebel Rattigan on Reggae Global Radio. Family, thanks for your continued support, your constructive criticisms, and your comments. Before I forget, to the thousands of you watching the program, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Today we have two guests, and as usual, you, the people out there, my family, please join and reason with us via phone. And you know the number already. Let me give it to you again. It's 667-369-8569. That's 667-369-8569. Or you can link us through the chat room. Big up yourself, Carolyn, as always, present. Now, last week, the streamlining of the phone calls went well. And as a reminder, we will continue with the two periods to call into the program. One of the periods will be at 4:30 daylight saving time, which is 3:30 Jamaica and 9:30 p.m. UK time. And the other period is at 5:30, which is 4:30 Jamaica time and 10:30 UK time. As a reminder, don't forget to tune into Reggae Global Radio, this station, tonight at midnight until 2 a.m. and relax with the Rebel. Tonight's theme is smooth jazz, and the selection is absolutely fantastic. So make it a date and don't be late. Now, if you look carefully, you'll notice a new background. This is the third background since we started the program. The first was a background of a garrison neighborhood that with zinc fences and board houses. And as I stated, it resembled my old neighborhood of Waterhouse. The second background, which I used for last week's show, was of a street located in the Cuba section of Waterhouse, a few blocks from my house. Now, those backgrounds prepared and they also inspired me for every single broadcast. They reminded me of who I am, where I came from. They reminded me of the struggles, disappointment, and hopelessness from whence I came. They also reminded me of the indomitable spirit and the will to succeed. They reminded me of the people who didn't make it out of the garrison, and the ones, including friends and family members, who are still there, waiting for their piece of the Jamaican pie, or pudding, as we call it, or a visa to get to foreign. Well, take a look at this background and then take another look because it's here to stay. Last week, Sunday, I was talking to a friend who was driving through Waterhouse and I directed him to go to a specific location and take some pictures. That location, this location, is 41 Penwood Crescent, a yard that included Miss Flores Rum Bar, Vivi's Betting Shop, Dad's Pick-Up House Shop, and yes, my first home in Waterhouse. See the people. See there, like that. See the entrance on that side over here. See the entrance over here, sir? The gate here. That you go through. A big, big lot. Whole heap of house in the yard. It looks pretty much the same way I left it decades ago, except for that. You can see the blue container? Yeah, that never there. The white container, no, I think there's a white container in the picture, yeah. A white container there, same place we left it. See it right there, so, after decades. So, when I saw this picture last Sunday, I have to be honest with you, my eyes welled up, and it took a while before I regained my composure. This is my place, my reminder, my inspiration, my drive, my beginning, and my resolve to speak out on behalf of poor people is now stronger than it has ever been. Family, if you run away and distance yourself from the burden, disappointment, suffering, and the people of your struggling past, then your soul will be forever burdened, and your so-called happiness will be empty. My true happiness is giving and helping those who are unable through circumstances beyond their control to help themselves. That is why I cherish the moniker Rebel with a Cause. Poor people, family, you are my cause. This afternoon I will be joined by the illustrious Herb Nelson Jr., and we will reason with my two guests. The first guest will be the renowned Dr. Canute Thompson, Professor of Educational Policy, Planning, and Leadership at the School of Education at the University of the West Indies. And he is also the head of the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning. And the second guest will be Miss Patricia Duncan-Sutherland. She's a successful businesswoman, president of the PNP Women's Movement, and also the PNP's deputy spokesperson for gender, culture, and social transformation issues. Shout out time now. Continued praise and blessings from Mama Eileen, Papa Trevor, Ma P and family, and Mrs. Nelson. Big shout out to the Reggae Global family, the Meadowbrook crew, the Firehouse crew, the Rollington crew, Donovan and the Admirals, stay so, and a crew of hardworking, dedicated, honest members of the JCF and JDF who are trying to keep Jamaica safe and secure. Update. Big news. Big news today. Last week, I spoke about my request for documents. I have been talking about this for quite some time now, from the Jamaican government concerning the private financing of Minister Amina Johnson Smith's unsuccessful bid to become the General Secretary of the Commonwealth. That's one request. The second request was for the 2.6 million pounds of high-grade fertilizer that Morocco gifted to Jamaica. As of today, it's been approximately 119 days since I first filed with the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries to get the fertilizer information. I filed again last week, and as of today, no response. Even though the law says that the government must, not may, not if them feel like, must, as we say, bone and compound, must respond within 30 days of the filing. Now, I filed 119 days ago. No response. It's all right. We have patience. As of today, it's been 128 days since I first filed to get the information from the Ministry of Finance regarding the private financing documents for Minister Amina Johnson Smith. And there is a serious development to report. Last week, I filed again. I filed last week to both ministries. And I received a response, believe it or not, from the Ministry of Finance, stating that they never received my filing. Never. Long story short, I refiled the original request. And lo and behold, I got a response. And here is the response. And I have to read it to your family. I have to read it still. It says, "Dear Mr. Rattigan, the ministry acknowledges receipt of your ATI application received via electronic mail on March 24th, 2023. In your application, you requested documents in relation to the Government of Jamaica's guideline for the acceptance of and accounting for gifts to the government as it relates to monies received towards the campaign of Senator Amina Johnson Smith as Secretary General to the Commonwealth as follows. 1. I asked for, there's a form, acceptance of gift, that's what it's called. Acceptance of gift form that was submitted to the Ministry of Finance concerning the 99,000 US dollars gift for the benefit of Senator Amina Johnson Smith's campaign to become Secretary General of the Commonwealth. That's the first request. Second one was the due diligence report detailing the sources of the gift. And 3, evidence that the gift was included in the estimates of expenditure and the additional administrative procedures were followed. Now, these three things I asked for, I just didn't ask them willy-nilly. I asked them based on the ministry's own regulations I asked. And here is the one critical sentence in all of this response. Please be advised that no documentation exists within the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service to satisfy your request. No documentation exists, which means them never file a document. No. No, me have my hat, me have my head, but it not make only for wear a hat. You know? And every time I sit down behind this mic, I have to give thanks and praise. Think about my old lady and my old man. My mother would tell me, say, if you decide to go to school and don't follow them bad boy, I will sell my drawers for keeping at school. Sorry for the crass language. But I hope you understand where I come from. Because them take people for that. Right? Now, the regulation says, and it's applicable to all public officials. This is coming from the Ministry of Finance. It says, when you get a gift, right, there's certain things that you must do. One of them, you must fill out this form. It's called, I don't know if you can see it. See it, acceptance of gift form, right? And it makes sense. For integrity purposes, it makes sense. If somebody will give the government a gift, then they have to fill it out as a gift, right? We can't take things under the table. We don't function like that, right? And it says that if you get a gift more than 2 million Jamaican dollars, then you have to fill out that form. And you have to notify, also, I think you have to notify the Integrity Commission. Now, we're in possession of the document filed by the company that received the $99,000 to perform services on behalf of Minister Amina Johnson Smith. That company, Fin Partners Inc., submitted this document. To who? The U.S. Department of Justice. Now, you don't play with them people there. And I can tell you that because I worked for the Department of Justice as an FBI agent for 30 years. You don't play with them people there. Anything you put on paper have to be correct. Otherwise, you're going to suffer the consequences for filing false information. Now, when I look at this thing, because what happens is that during that time period, remember, Minister Morgan come out and say, oh, the government not involved, it's a private concern, and this and that and that and that. Okay. On this form, section 4, it says name of foreign principal. And the name of the foreign principal is not the government of Jamaica. Amina Johnson Smith. Section 7. Indicate whether the foreign principal is one of the following: government of a foreign country, a foreign political party, foreign or domestic organization, partnership, corporation, association, committee, voluntary, other, or an individual. Guess what them check? See it here. You can see it. See right there, so individual. 7. And look at number 4, Amina Johnson Smith. So, Amina Johnson Smith received a gift. And then further in the document, they talk about a contract executed between them and Minister Amina Johnson Smith. So, the minister was supposed to file this gift form, and she's supposed to tell us who gave her the money or where the money came from. She's supposed to tell us the donors, their address, their phone number, their email, the date of the receipt of the gift, and so on and so forth. Purpose of the gift, so on and so forth. No, guess what? We just find out based on this. Please be advised that no documentation exists within the Ministry of Finance and Public Service to satisfy your request, which means that she did not file. Nobody, whether neither she nor a surrogate, file the required document. And the question is, why? Why? We can't get politicians a lie around here. Because guess what? When you are travel, if them did go through the law with the car seat and you are travel, and you not have the car seat inside it, them not giving you a lie. And not only that, them supposed to set the example. And they haven't filed it. So, guess what now? Again, like me say, Mama, know you're proud of your son. I'm not gonna do you. Now make you even prouder. We are going. You know what? Let me just get back to the script. Some may ask, why fuss? Why the fuss about Minister Johnson Smith and the funding behind her campaign to become Secretary General of the Commonwealth? Several reasons, and this is not the the kit and caboodle, the complete array of reasons. But here are some of the reasons why we're fussing about it. It shows several things, including but not limited to our betrayal of the agreement in CARICOM to support another candidate, and that was the incumbent Baroness Scotland. There was an agreement, there was a consensus in CARICOM that CARICOM would support this lady. I think she come from Dominica. She already has a job, and she wanted to extend, and there was a consensus that yes, we will go ahead and we will support her. And Jamaica just turned around and just said, well, I think it was after Boris. Somebody, one of them British officials that come Jamaica. I think it was Boris. Or had something to do with some meetings, because Boris didn't get along well with the Baroness, right? Or Baroness Scotland. Didn't get along well with her. And Jamaica up and said, you know what? We have put up our own candidate. Now keep in mind, these CARICOM, our region, right? Where we're supposed to have principled men and women, that when you give your word is your bond. And we turn our backs on the consensus and we said, no, we're putting up her. Next thing it showed our incompetence to read the diplomatic tea leaves correctly, when we were duped into thinking that the minister would receive the overwhelming support of the African member states of the Commonwealth. Because they realized that, and there was a split in CARICOM. Most of the countries said, we're not going to support the minister. We're going to go along with the agreement reached as a result, of the consensus. We're going to go along with the consensus. So what did they do? That's when they pack her up and fly her to Africa so that she can get the support, so that she would have enough votes to override whatever CARICOM planned on doing, voting against her, right? And what the Africans do, the Africans say, yeah man, no problem. And then when she reach what happened? Boom! Or better yet, radam! And the government spend millions and millions of our taxpayer dollars to go to Kigali. They were in a celebratory mood because they were told, I think it's quoted as one of them saying that we have the votes in our pockets. And a whole heap of them go, including the ambassador, the Jamaican ambassador to the US, Audrey Marks. I don't know what purpose she's serving going over there. She should stay right as I help the people. But anyway, them go. Complete disappointment. It also shows her blatant disregard for rules and regulations. This is a seasoned attorney, And so we hold her to one standard when it comes to these things, regulations. She knew that she should have filed it, or she should have known. Very simple. Very simple. She knew or she should have known. Either way, it should have been filed. Not filed. But they expect people to comply with the rules. But the rules don't apply to them. It also shows a superiority complex in that they can do whatever they want, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. It shows a penchant for misrepresenting, spinning, and lying about the facts. And it also shows that they have absolutely no shame in doing so. Keep in mind that the minister's only response I can recall to the incident was that she said God wasn't ready for her to leave Jamaica and take up the post in London. Did she talk to God about this? Did God promise her anything? This, ladies and gentlemen, family, is our eminent and qualified, so-called eminent and qualified foreign minister. What a disgrace. God wasn't ready for her, so that's why she never get it. If she had a direct connection with God, maybe God would have told her, no, you're not going to get this job here. I would like to know, since she said she talked to God, since she said God wasn't ready, I wonder if she talked to God and what did God tell her? Did he tell her, go ahead with it, and then him change his mind? Or did he not answer and she decided she going to go? I'm telling her no, and she said, hell with this, I'm going anyway. But this is the conundrum. And, you know, small things, sometimes it's not the crime or the failure to do certain things, it's the cover up. And that is what we're looking at right now. You know. Well, I have enough information to move forward with litigating this matter in the Jamaican courts. And God willing, I will. Well, family, I'm excited to have as our first guest, Dr. Canute Thompson. Let me drag him over here. I don't mean that literally. Bear with me. Okay, here we go. Doc, welcome to Reason with Rattigan. A pleasure to have you, sir.
Thank you so very much. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure listening to your opening salvo.
Well,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, you know, what's going on. We just get on with soapbox, and you know the thing about it is that you know you have a lot of talk shops where people
Yes.
that talk and even a friend of mine from Philadelphia said it to me today. Sent me a message and he said, "Listen, you know, just don't be critical only. You have to talk about how things can work and why they don't work so that we can move forward." And I've found you to be that person because, and I'll say this to you, to my listening and viewing audience, family. I've never met Professor Canute Thompson until now. I mean, this week I spoke to him. I think I saw him on camera first time. I think this morning, but I've read his articles, and he's remarkable in a couple of ways. He's remarkable in the sense that he's honest, and that's rare these days. He's honest. He comes right on and he says, "Look, I'm a PNP supporter," but he holds the PNP's feet to the fire, and he has given the government suggestions. So he's not just sitting back saying, "I want them to fail." He's saying, "Look, government," and I think we're on the same wavelength because I firmly believe that once the elections are over, we have to support the government.
Absolutely.
Whatever your political affiliation, we have, because that government is not the government of the particular party to whom it belongs, but it's the government of the entire country. When they go up, when they represent Jamaica, they don't say this is a government of the JLP or the PNP or the UIC. They say no. This is the Jamaican government. So I firmly believe that we have to support them, and when they make mistakes, we have to criticize them, and we criticize them because we want them to be aware and we want them to do better, not necessarily to bring them down. And that's one of the things that I found very striking about the doctor here, because I've gone through some of his articles and I saw where he offered them suggestions as to how to make things better, whether it's crime, whether it's leadership, whether it's the compensation issues the other day. And so I'm really thrilled to have him on. So Doc, listen, I've talked long enough. What I'd like to do at this point is to ask you to tell the listening audience, the viewing audience, who is Dr. Canute Thompson?
All right. Thanks once again, and good evening to your listeners. So Canute Thompson is a boy from the rural parish of Manchester. Attended Manchester High School, grew up on a farm, worked close with my father. We lived in the bauxite belt, and I have come to discover how precious the environment is and regret the heavy decimation of the environment that has taken place with bauxite mining. I'm an activist by practice, concerned with issues of equity, issues of the environment, issue of educational development, and human flourishing. My first area of study was in theology, and then I morphed into management studies and later education. I'm a management consultant by practice, and as you said earlier at the top of the hour, of the introductory section, professor now of educational policy, planning, and leadership at the University of the West Indies. I am a Jamaica First citizen and an unashamed supporter of the People's National Party, and fully committed to the transformation of Jamaica and doing my best in that regard. I use all forms of communication available to reach various audiences, both books and journal articles, for the purposes of stimulating reasoning, policy making at the academic and policy making level. And I use social media to engage a large audience of followers and non-followers and make the case that the space is to be used for uplifting conversation. I'm a very strong critic of government within the context of a philosophy that says that we can do better than we're doing. And so my philosophy is one of raising the bar on leadership and conceiving of and creating a better society. My 2018 book, in fact, is called Leadership and Governance in Jamaica Towards a Better Society. And in subsequent works, I've looked at Towards a Better Caribbean, reimagining education and leadership in the Caribbean. And based on the fact that education is a central pillar, the most important tool for sustainable transformation. And my latest book, 2020 book, is entitled Education and Development, Policy Imperatives for Jamaica and the Caribbean. And so, yeah, I'm a fighter for a better society.
Okay, nice introduction. I tell you, when I look at the accolades and the things that you've done, I mean, I'm extremely impressed. So again, I'm extremely happy to have you here. Now, I read one of your articles. It's called "The Threat of Lawlessness Facing Jamaica: The Influence of Vested Interests," and very, very interesting article. And I suggest to the audience that if they haven't read it, they should just Google it and take a look at it. It's dated February 23rd of this year. And I think the thesis is that, well, actually, it says it right here. There's a quote in it from David Rockefeller, and it said it's reported to have quipped that governments hold office, but businesses hold power. Then he went on to say, businesses influence the affairs of countries. And he used that to springboard into the PSOJ and Jamaica. Now, what I'd like you to do for us, Professor, Doctor, is explain to us, why do you think that businesses essentially businesses influence government and government govern people? So in effect, people are being governed by PSOJ. Let's put it that way in Jamaica.
Yes.
Explain that theory.
Thank you. So there are three elements at the bottom. And I think Prime Minister Andrew Holness, either in a moment of desperation or in a time of unintended transparency, said on September 21 in 2020, during the height of the COVID crisis, that he was pressured into making certain decisions in terms of lockdowns by vested interests. But when he needed them, they were not around. Now, the question then becomes, how do businesses come to have that level of influence over governments? And so here's the first element.
Mm-hmm.
Governments depend on businesses. Let me put it on. Political parties depend on businesses for financial support to run elections. These businesses see their contribution not as gifts of goodwill or charity. They see it as investment towards access to policy, to beneficial policy. So in effect, the private sector, other entities which fund political parties, make deals concerning what should be the returns that they will get, the favors they'll get, the preferential treatments they will get for their contributions to the operation of the political party. That's one. So it's a direct transaction which involves clearly defined expectations for return of favors, for return of privileges, for return of policy preferences in relation to these investments. That's one. The second is that businesses operate as conglomerates and have the capacity to make the quote unquote, make the life of a political party in office either favorable or unfavorable. And you're old enough to recall what happened in the 1970s. I was a young boy then in my teens, and I distinctly recall companies plotting and to raise the price of goods.
1 second, please. 1 second, please. Herb, hold on 1 second. Kevin is going to drag you over. All right, please continue. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, or to hoard goods in order to make to make citizens turn against the government. So, given their control of large sections of the economy, or several sectors of the economy, businesses have the capacity to bend the will of governments in their direction, right? And they may do so by various means, by raising interest rates in the case of banks, by holding basic goods and supplies in the case of merchants who trade, but also by creating an unfavorable public perception of the government to external forces which may have an interest in either, in those cases, we may have an interest in affecting the operations and the functioning of the government, which takes me to the third area, that governments are not, certainly governments in developing countries, do not operate independently of the influence of foreign countries. And very often when a foreign country wishes to influence the functioning of a particular democracy, they do so using businesses as a conduit to which they bring pressure to bear. So ultimately, many governments in countries are puppets both of the private sector and of predatory hegemonic powers, be it the US or Russia, as the case might be.
Okay. Now, let me talk to you specifically about the Integrity Commission.
Yes.
And the Prime Minister. Now, in this article, you posit that the PSOJ, they came to the Prime Minister's rescue, basically, when the Integrity Commission tabled their investigation. And they were calling for the commissioner to resign. Yet,
yes,
when and so far, he's failed, his financial disclosures have not been verified by the Integrity Commission. Yet we haven't heard anything about them speaking out about that.
Indeed.
And so you raise that question that this, to support the position that the PSOJ, as they say, is revered as the most powerful interest group in Jamaica. And you raise it to say, what?
Okay, so let me very, very important question. So the issue is, what are the motivations? What are the reasons the PSOJ is appearing to be so soft on the government? And I'm suggesting to you that the government has so far, this government of the Honest administration has been very responsive, very cooperative, very submissive to the interests and wishes of the private sector. Notice, for example, that when Fitz-Jackson brought this private members bill called the banking bill, that would impose certain restrictions on the bank's freedom to take money from your account.
I remember.
The government voted to kill the bill, right? Because they were doing so in order to keep faith with and to pay their dues to the private sector. So the private sector in Jamaica, and I've been very blunt about this, was never outraged, has not shown any outrage about the fact that the Prime Minister's integrity filing in 2019 was late, which was a violation of the law. If we had a DPP of the grit and gravitas of Alvin Bragg, or the director of corruption prosecution at the Integrity Commission, who had that man's grit, Mr. Honest would face prosecution because being late with your submission is a violation of the law and carries sanctions. But nothing happened. The PSOJ was not outraged then. The PSOJ was not outraged, has not been outraged since October of 2022, when it was announced that the Prime Minister has not received certification of his filing. That was October. This is what now? June. Sorry, this is April. So we're looking at about 7 months. So for 7 months, the Prime Minister's financial situation has not reached the level where it can be certified as quote unquote clear. The PSOJ is not outraged about that. The PSOJ was not outraged when the said Integrity Commission found in 2017 that the $600 million that were allocated for disaster mitigation and spent in a course of 10 days between November 18 and November 28, the date of the local government election. That was the last local government in Jamaica, election in Jamaica. The PSOJ was outraged that so much money was spent. But the moment the Integrity Commission exposed the fact that the Prime Minister was under criminal investigation, the PSOJ goes up in arms. And they're doing so because they want to preserve the relationship whereby they get their way with government in relation to policies that are made. So if you look around Kingston, for example, and see the number of high-rise buildings that are going up, some without proper approval, and in the absence of a clear environmental and development plan. Why is that happening? Because the owners of these properties are getting their, might I say, the return on their investment for supporting the government. Recall, for example, in 2017, the government introduced a budget which resulted in a 60% reduction in transfer tax on real estate transactions. To that time, the transfer tax was 5% of the value of the property. Government reduced it to 2%, not because they want to help your aunt from Waterhouse or my uncle from Wales in Newport, but because they want to help their friends in the private sector. That change transferred $14 billion of taxpayer funds or potential taxpayer funds from the poor people of Jamaica to the rich investors. So the private sector is getting its way. It, in effect, dictates policy. And so it has to appear to be publicly supported. But I can tell you this. In some of the private conversations you have with these guys, they are not happy with how some of the things the government is doing, but they're remaining silent because they are, for the most part, having their way.
Okay. A lot to unpack there, but Herb, Kevin is still trying to get you over. Can you hear us, Herb? You have to unmute.
I'm hearing you.
Okay, all right. Well, well, I'll tell you what. We'll keep working. Kevin is in the background working to move you over. In the meantime, do you have a question for the professor?
Sure.
Okay.
It's funny that you started off with the PSOJ, because to me, the private sector, who should be the honest broker here, if the government is in fact catering to their needs and solely to their needs, and not committed to good governance, then I think the private sector should be called out for their participation in cover-ups and everything else that's going on with this government. But my question here, Professor, I see Attorney Rattigan in his role as attorney prepared to file whatever motion there is to file to get some truths revealed from this government about the donations and the various financial commitments they have made in the past. Now, based on your management experience, is the NIA and I'm trying to remember the name of the other lady who was the other organization that privately does investigations.
You mean 18 Degrees North?
18 Degrees North. Okay, she's the media, which I know she's motivated by some degree of independence. But there's another lady with an official investigative unit that is on the private sector side. NIA is part of the TI program.
Yes.
Okay, but where is the outcry? Who is supposed to be keeping balls and strikes and scores on the government just to ensure all of Jamaica is a beneficiary of their governance?
Excellent question. That should be the role of the media. And I think it was Roosevelt who said that, who regarded the media as a fourth branch of government. The media in Jamaica, for the most part, have been bought out by the government. And by this I mean, there's a particular radio station, and in deference to them, I won't call their name. They carry a significant share of government advertising, all right? They have the most programs which feature government ministers and ministries, yes? And spin news in a way to favor the government. They are, in a manner that has reached a point of being repugnant, yes? We have several investigative journalists who have been literally bought by the government in the sense that they are now employed as PR persons. There are 4 former investigative journalists who are now working as PR agents in various government ministries, and there are several others. And what it really reflects is an overall plan by the government to seek to insulate itself from criticism and from accountability. But it's not only the media. So to answer your question, the failure to hold the government accountable, or put another way, the responsibility of holding the government accountable is, in terms of the political arrangements, that of the opposition, but acting on behalf of the public, that's supposed to be the media. Then you will have other layers of support, such as civil society and the private sector. But having castrated the media in some respects and having entered these questionable relationships with the private sector, the government was hoping to enjoy somewhat of free rein. But alongside that, you have to remember that the government also had sought to control the courts. Remember in 2018, it might have been, or given the year, exact year, 2019, the Prime Minister sought to appoint the Chief Justice into a clear vacancy. It wasn't that as though the substantive Chief Justice, or the incumbent Chief Justice, sorry, was on leave or was going to be out of the jurisdiction. She had retired, and the Prime Minister sought to appoint the new Chief Justice on a probationary basis. And the 97 senior judges across the country, for the first time in our recent history, took action as a body, wrote to the Prime Minister, demanding that he respects the lines of demarcation and separation of powers between the executive and the judiciary. All right? And that was and the Prime Minister only relented when the Jamaican Bar Association indicated that they were going to take his action to the Privy Council. So if you control the media and control the judiciary, then you can see what kinds of, not only media, if you control the media and the judiciary and you are willing to act in the interest of the private sector, you can see the kind of platform or corruption that the government is now going to create. But there's the other element, if you notice, that the language of the Prime Minister is that of, in some cases, that of Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the media is, the academy, that academics are the reason the people are turning away from their government. Andrew Holness uses the same kind of language. So what we're having in Jamaica is an emerging dictatorship, which is founded on the one hand, compliance with the wishes of the private sector and the buying out of the media. That's my analysis.
Okay. Now, excuse me, is it then a reasonable conclusion that we may have to turn more and more to the courts to file motions in court, to have certain actions that is mandated under law, like the prosecution of the Prime Minister based on the finding of the Integrity Commission, and other actions similar, because we have two ministers who pretty much are walking around, free as a bird, if I can use that term, the Education Ministry as well as the MSET Ministry, when it doesn't seem like anything is going on with their prosecutions.
Yes. I think that is the direction in which we'll have to go in. And I want to commend Council Rattigan for his commitment, his pledge to taking action to the courts to get proper disclosure on the question of this ill-fated attempt at the seat of Commonwealth Secretary General. And if you're interested, Council, I've written on that question as well. That article is on the site. I think I have 2 articles on it. But here's the point I want to make. And your finger was on the pulse. The refusal to file, given that the minister, as an attorney herself, and even if she were not, as a person in that office, she knew, or she knows, or she ought to know that filing is a legal obligation. Part of the reason she doesn't do that, in the same way Mr. Honus has refused to disclose to the country the reasons for the holdup in the certification, mindful that the Integrity Commission cannot itself make public the questions they've asked him and whether or not he has responded and they've asked for the question. They can say nothing about the matter. Only he can. The reason he can flout the law in the way he is doing, as is Amina Johnson Smith, is because we have a weak media establishment. If we had the kind of investigative journalists, the kind of fearless journalists who would ask, everywhere they turn up, they would ask the question, then you would see a different behavior. But for the most part, we have these guys who are referred to somehow, they're like lap dogs. And I'm not really referring to them as dogs. I'm just saying that they are gentle and unoffensive and pretty much compliant with the wishes of the Prime Minister. But so civil society and citizens of conscience and conscientiousness will have to now use the courts to get declarations and orders that will compel appropriate action on the part of government, or else we're going to descend into being descending into anarchy as a country.
Let me just say this to our listening audience. We're going to go through the commercial break. So if you're listening to us, then I was told that you can go to the streaming section, but you have to mute the radio because it came to my attention that people listening on the radio, they couldn't hear through the stream because they said they couldn't hear us talking because they could hear the commercials. But I was told that once you mute the radio, then you should be fine. Professor, let me ask you this question. In the same article, and I've got a bunch of, I don't even know if we're going to get through them because I have a bunch of questions, a bunch of articles. But you said that, and this Jamaican people need to understand this. My people, them people from right or so, they need to understand this. And what is this? Here's what you said. It is true that at elections, the general population expresses its voice at the ballot box, though some election results are contrived through vote buying. But broadly speaking, the decisions of whichever political party forms the government are influenced by a few. In short, interest groups, whether aligned to one political party or another, or strategically aligned to both, are behind many decisions made by elected governments. Now, the ordinary man in the street, would think that, and I'm saying the ordinary man because I know people who vote and I talk to them, and they're of the impression that, okay, I vote for a particular party. That party, out of that party will come the government, and that government is going to attend to the needs of me, the everyday person. How do you explain to them that, look, yeah, you're voting, but the people that you're voting for as a bloc, as a government, you are not the first priority. The first priority will be the business people because that's where they get the funding from. That's where they get their marching orders from, not from you. You give me a vote, but you don't give me any money, right?
Yes.
They support me, and to some degree, meaning the government is beholden to those people. How do you explain that to somebody? And because of the voter apathy, how do you get them to say, okay, what you're telling me doesn't sound attractive for me to vote, so I'm going to vote? How do you get them to go over that hurdle and go past the 37% that voted in the last general election?
Well, here's my take on it, Mr. Rattigan.
You can't call me Rattigan, man. I need a minister. We are family.
The level of voter apathy is the evidence or is an indicator of the degree to which people recognize that their votes don't count. And while I am a supporter of the policies of the People's National Party, it has to be affirmed that, for example, during the period 2012 to 2015, end of 2015, elections were February, there were some policy decisions that the government took which reflected more closely the wishes of the international community and the private sector. Now, it is to be appreciated that one of the most important tasks that the government had when it took power in 2012, the PNP government, was to rescue the image of the country, which had been battered, having walked away from the IMF deal. Sorry, I'm going to ask you to take a break. My phone is dying. I'll have to plug in my phone. So could we shift a bit while I do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Herb? Can't hear you.
You can see me?
Yeah, I can see you on the Skype. Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Cool.
Yeah, I'll wait for him to come back.
No,
Yeah.
I like his perspectives because he is not just an academic, but he's putting it into perspective so the people can see. So whether you're educated or whether you are from Waterhouse or Finchtown or wherever you're from, you're hearing it and you can put all of this together. So I really appreciate what he has been saying.
Yeah.
And it's important that the part where we can take things to court. We should mention the case of Wayne Lonesome.
Yeah.
Wayne is taking the commissioner to court.
I think he has a hearing date. I think it's the 18th of this month.
Yeah, he has a hearing date that has come up. So maybe the good doctor could care to comment on that, where ordinary Jamaican can sue I wouldn't call Wayne an ordinary Jamaican, but he's a concerned Jamaican, where he can actually file suit in the Supreme Court to have the Commissioner of Police answer for failure to prosecute so many people at the higher levels who are guilty of one thing or another. They like we chant here in the U.S., lock them up.
Right.
So now this people used to chant that. It's now their turn to have it chanted on them.
Doc, I mean,
If I might just just diving on that point.
Sure, go ahead, please.
That was the third element I wanted to, or the fourth element. So there's a private sector, the media, the court. The fourth one is the law enforcement. The current Commissioner of Police was the only ever national security advisor to the Prime Minister. And since he left that post has not been filled. A Commissioner of Police is expected to be an unaligned, independent, fierce enforcer of the law.
You're talking about all the things that this police commissioner is not.
Where you have a police commissioner who served as the advisor, meaning to say a person who would be operating philosophically and politically as an ally of the Prime Minister, where you have that person becoming Commissioner of Police, you're effectively compromising the office of Police Commissioner. But this is not the first time. We had, when Mr. Honus was Minister of Education, he had an advisor, his name eludes me just now, but he had an advisor who he sought to make the chair of the Teachers Services Commission. the Teacher Services Commission is expected to be an independent body which vets recommendations and submissions for the job of principal of schools. And the JTA, which has 6 seats on the Teacher Services Commission, refused to participate in the deliberations of the commission, and therefore made it impossible for them to have a quorum, in opposition to the appointment or the proposed appointment of, his name was Alphonsus Davis. So it's a violation of the principles of good governance that you place your political ally in a position or in offices that ought to have an independent mind. And there are several questions surrounding various ministers, various persons in the government, which the commissioner ought to be investigating. Let me give you 3, just 3. There is a Minister Warmington was heard verbally abusing police officers who sought to enforce the law concerning the movement of persons during COVID. And he told them several expletives, as we call it. He F-bombed them, all right? And the commissioner was supposed to conduct an investigation into that. This is from 2020. We haven't heard a thing about that investigation. I tell you what we have heard. So the order under which the police officers were operating in telling Mr. Warmington that he can't be on the streets was an order under the Disaster Risk Management Act, which restricted movement. Having told them that he ain't gonna move and they must move wherever, that order was amended much in a Nicodemus style, such that subsequent to that, a minister was the no movement order did not apply to ministers, which is why we saw young man Green and others were gallivanting on no movement day, but it wasn't a violation of the law. It was a violation of conscience and good ethics, but there was nothing illegal about it anymore, because the order had been amended secretly following Warmington's behavior. All right. Now, whether or not it was a consequence of that is another question, but it certainly is an undisputed fact that it was after Warmington had abused the police officers that the order was amended. So that's one. We have heard nothing about that report. Then there is a sophisticated illegal LPG operation that was uncovered in St. Catherine. All right, a massive business. This company was selling LPG, liquid petroleum gas, without a license from the company in whose name it was being sold.
I remember that.
No investigation have been, well, put it this way, no reports have been publicized and no arrests have been made. But news on the streets is that the owner of that station is a highly placed person in the government. And so it goes nothing. The final example is the case of the man who was found dead in a lawyer's house. Now, if a person is found dead in my yard, I am the first suspect. But this man was found dead in the lawyer's house, and nothing has come of it. The lawyer happens to be, when he had his license, the attorney of the Prime Minister. So these may be separate facts, all right? And I'm not saying that the man wasn't arrested, because I'm only stating 2 facts. 1, he's a lawyer to the Prime Minister, and 2, a man was found in his house. The 3rd fact is that nothing has come of it.
Well, you know what? I mean,
at least that we know of.
Yeah, I mean, we could go and talk for days, because I mean, there's so much to discuss here. But let me just talk about this one point. You talk about them amending the law to cover past actions so that it couldn't be prosecuted. Now, one of the things I see happening here is with the Integrity Commission Act of 2017, right?
Yes.
Now, in this act, it gives the corruption prosecutor the right to go to the DPP and ask for an opinion regarding a case. It also gives the commission the right to ask the DPP. And it also gives inherently the right of anyone to ask those two, the commission and the corruption prosecutor, to go to
Yes.
the DPP. Yet nobody has done that. And then what I saw last week was that they're asking now they're actually engaged in the process of amending the Integrity Commission Act of 2017. And you know why? Because there is no statute of limitation in Jamaican corruption. So and remember, the prosecutor said that she said there are some charges that I don't have enough evidence. But there's one charge that I do have evidence, but I'm not going to bring it because of the term abuse of process. And then when you ask, what does that mean? The closest you get to an answer is that it's stale. It happened a long time ago, and it took some time before they brought it to the parliament. But it doesn't mean that it cannot be prosecuted. Yes. And then also by saying that, what she's done is she's made it clear to people who are under investigation for the last 4 or 5 years that they can raise the same defense. They can say, "Hey, abuse of process. You did it for the prime minister." So,
absolutely,
right.
Absolutely.
So there's a huge problem with that. But somebody asked a question. They sent a lot of questions and comments. They said that Michael Manley made the mistake of antagonizing businesses to the extent of failure. So they're saying that, politicians, it's unavoidable that they have to work with business people because that's where essentially the mother's milk is. And that Michael Manley didn't do that, and so he was in office at the peril of this.
I respond to that.
Yes, certainly, please.
All right. So there is no doubt that there has to be a partnership among the various sectors of society: government, private sector, large and small businesses, including that, the family, the church, and other, other institutions and areas of society. There's no doubt that there has to be partnership. My problem is, and my critique is grounded in what I call the inequity in the partnership. Inequity. So let me give just 2 examples. If a tax, the public transport system in Jamaica is broken, and we have now filling the breach because JUTC has been run to the ground. We have now filling the breach private taxi operators and large operators such as Knutsford. You may know of Knutsford.
I do.
Knutsford Express.
I do.
Knutsford Express, as a large private sector company in the transport business, raises its rates at will without any reference whatever to government. Right? You would have traveled on Knutsford last week and paid one fare, and this week ago the fare for the same route is gone up. They do so at will. Then there's no regulation concerning Knutsford Express. But the guy who drives a Probox or other little car and has a Hackney license, he cannot raise rates unless approved by government. How do you explain that? Right? Similarly, the banks. The banks will raise rates at will. And sometimes they will say it's because BOJ has raised the threshold for the amounts that BOJ owes to them, or BOJ has raised its own interest rates by whatever quarter of a basis point, all right, and so that is passed on to the consumer. JPS, however, cannot raise its rates unless it goes to the OUR. So it's the lack of equity I'm talking about in the partnership. We need the private sector, all right? But the private sector cannot be allowed to do as it will with consumers, while other operators, small operators, are held to a higher standard.
Okay, Herb?
Okay, I'm getting some questions on the side here that wants to challenge the fact that Dr. Thompson is an education reformer, and that we are asking him questions that it's assumed that he does not have experience advising government or governments of the Caribbean. But my comeback to them, Dr. Thompson, was, what about Dr. Herbert Gale? Over 20 countries where he's been the person giving social action commentary to help them resolve the gang issues and other issues. Now, we have people in education like yourself and like Dr. Gale. What advice would you give to this current government if you say to the PM, look, you need to worry about your legacy at this point. Here's some of the things you can do to ensure that your legacy, and I'm asking this as a university professor, to ensure that his legacy comes out in a more positive manner, that he does resolve issues for those in the underserved communities of Jamaica.
Yes. All right. If I might, there's an element of your intro to that question to which I would want to respond from understanding it. One of your listeners, or a couple of listeners, are raising questions about my bona fides, the base on which I'm offering commentary on matters unrelated to education. And I think that questions about a person's capacity to do things are ought to be raised. But I would speak tongue in cheek and say the proof of the eating is in the pudding, which is to say, take what I say and assess it for what it is. Now, if you find that my assertions and my analyses are flawed, then that's where we begin the conversation. But to assume that the area is outside my competence and therefore can't speak on it is an unhelpful way to start. All right, but just to go one step further, my area of work, having studied management studies, development, Caribbean business environment, and undertaken research in a variety of areas, form the basis of my commentary on various issues, right? Of which education is just one. But to come to your question then about the legacy of that the Prime Minister, I think the Gleaner wrote an article, an editorial some weeks ago, urging the Prime Minister to make the attack or the assault on corruption, or the strengthening of the anti-corruption enterprise, if you will, his legacy, to focus on that. The irony about that is that the Prime Minister has gone in the opposite direction. And at one point, back in 2019, I think it was, the Jamaica Observer labeled me the most austere critic of the government, of the Homeless Administration, which may or may not have been an accurate assessment. But what is clear is that I've been very persistent, much to the chagrin and anger of many of his supporters in Parliament. I've been very persistent in my criticism of Mr. Holness, because I believe that he has knowingly or unknowingly, deliberately or helplessly, presided over a highly corrupt government. And when his own financial situation, if I might put it that way, cannot meet certification, then the parallel things of presiding over a corrupt government and having legitimate questions raised about his own finances point to him being in a highly questionable position with respect to the purity of his own finances. So my recommendation to him concerning his legacy is that rather than whittling down, rather than diminishing the power and authority of the Integrity Commission, is to strengthen it. And secondly, given that wealth is not a crime and success is not a shame, right? And moving from poverty to prosperity in a short time should be something we celebrate, provided that transition has followed a pure path. One of the things I would urge the Prime Minister to do is to hold town hall meetings, particularly with young people, and share with them openly and transparently how it is that as a young man who started working in a voluntary organization as an aide to Mr. Siaga in the 1990s, after leaving high school, after leaving university, how is it that in the course of 30 years, on a comparatively shoestring salary, $4 million a year as an MP, as a minister he became minister in 2007. Yes, he was earning about $6 million by that time, all right? How is it that he has been able to accumulate that amount of wealth? I mean, I do not have maybe 100 of what the Prime Minister has. But I have been teaching money management and what I call strategic personal development since the 1990s. I meet youngsters, no longer youngsters, big people, who remind me of the workshop on money management we did in the 1990s and the kind of investment decisions that they took and where that has put them. So to the question you're asking, firstly, to strengthen, not weaken, the Integrity Commission. Secondly, to make transparent all his financial transactions and to obtain certification. And thirdly, to use his time, whether as Prime Minister or post-Prime Minister, hopefully while he's Prime Minister, to teach, to transfer, to share the skills that he has used to accumulate, to become so successful in his private affairs. Because success is not a shame. But let me just make a quick rendezvous to a point you made earlier, Rattigan, about the Integrity Commission. Let's bear in mind, the bill that led to the Integrity Commission was framed in 2015 under the PNP administration. The government changed in 2016. And in January of 2017, and here I'm going to give you 3 key dates to remember. The bill became law, passed in the lower house, in the Parliament, House of Representatives, was passed into law in the House of Representatives in January of 2017. Mm-hmm. January. It did not reach the Senate until July of 2017, 7 months later or 6 months later, right? It was not gazetted and proclaimed by the Governor General until March of 2018. Let me show you precedent. The Zoso Act moved from a bill to law in 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. 6 weeks. Now, we must ask ourselves the question, is there mischief involved in that period of gestation for the Integrity Commission Act? And I would say there's a strong probability that there is mischief. Why? Because by dragging it out throughout 2017, the government, when it was passed in 2018, you know what the government said?
that the IC Act having come into force on March 18 in 2018 means that the IC had no jurisdiction over the Prime Minister's declaration of 2017. That's what happened. So the IC is barred from investigating the finances of the Prime Minister or publishing those finances in his 2017 declaration.
Well, let me ask you
And
this.
I'm saying to you, that tells you a lot.
Well, let me ask you this. So then, if that's the case, who would be responsible for investigating his financial submissions? Nobody.
No.
Okay, because it didn't come into effect until later. All right. No, I'm getting text messages from somebody here who they know you and they have some criticism. So I tell them to call because it's very lengthy. But here's two things I want to.
Have a criticism.
They're gonna call in. They're gonna call in, and then we'll talk about it. But there are two things I want to quickly address with you, or have you quickly address. One is, I'd like you to give us an assessment of the state of education in Jamaica. That's one. Because somebody said that you're in the education field and we're not asking education questions, but that's one. The second one is that I'd like you to educate the public, or at least explain to the public, why you think that some people are worse off under the new public sector compensation system.
That's a very interesting question. I'll take them both. But, only today. By the way, the reason I'm so casual dressed, I'm on vacation for the weekend.
No, man, no worries.
All right. But as I sat under one of these gazebos outside and reflected on some texts I got, I am taking the decision to do an in-depth study of the new compensation review. The new compensation system. Mm-hmm. If you go to my website, leadershipimagination.com, you will see two articles written on the new compensation system. One before the system was introduced in mid-December, and the other since. I'm going to do an in-depth study, and there are, among the questions I'm going to be asking that study, I'm going to do it among public sector workers, of course. Here's question one. What is your experience with the new public sector compensation system? Are you better off, worse off, or just the same? All right? And I'm asking that question because there are so many people who are reaching out to me, telling me about how worse their situations are. There are teachers, and JT might need to hear this. There are teachers who have approached me for technical advice on how they can form a union and break away from the JTA. All right. There are several gaps in the new system. Qualifications no longer count. If you have a master's degree, a person who has a bachelor's degree or diploma could get the same salary as you are because of how the bands are constructed. Mm-hmm. The area of posts of special responsibility no longer count. The fact that you are a head of department or that you supervise the gardeners and the cleaners as part of your substantive work, you no longer get compensation for that. All right? Post of special responsibility. Your years of experience don't count. That you are 20 years in the service may put you on the same band as a person who's 5 years and you're getting the same salary. So there are several weaknesses. And finally, increments. You could count on movement along the scale based on another year's experience or an additional qualification. Government has cut that out. So there are several flaws in the new system, and I'm going to be diving deep into it. As at now, I cannot speak authoritatively to say that the majority of public sector workers are worse off or better off, but from the available evidence coming in my direction, from the several calls and WhatsApp messages I'm getting, it appears that more people are worse off than those who are better off. But I'm going to study it empirically.
Okay.
Let's come to your question about the education system.
Before we talk about the education system, there is an example you gave about the take-home pay under the old compensation system and the take-home pay under the new compensation system. And I think you mentioned that upkeep is now taxable at 25%. So actually, and you gave an example of somebody who's actually earning less. They're making more, but they're earning, the take-home pay is less.
Yes, yeah, good example. So let us do a little bit of arithmetic around that. Under the old compensation, let's think of a person whose salary was $4 million under the old system, and they're getting the first 1.5 million is tax free, so they pay taxes on the 2.5 million, all right? And the tax is 30%. 25% income tax, and the other 5% for education tax and so on. So 30% of 2.5 million is about $800,000. All right. So that's 800,000 from 24, leave you with 16. So 16 divided by 12 gives you about 125, little bit over 125, and then you go back to the tax-free portion, the 150, 1.5. That's again another rough 125. So that person's taking home 250. All right, you with me? Little bit over 250 something. Under the new compensation system, the person has gotten a 10% increase on that 400,000, on that 4 million. And it's 10% because we are looking at, these are first 2 years. So they're getting 5% in year one, another 5% in year two. So cumulatively, they're getting a 10% increase. That's $400. Sorry, $400,000. You with me?
Yes, I am.
So they're now 4.4. All right. So let's hold the same numbers. So they're still getting the tax free on the 1.5. So let us look at what that 400,000 means. So that 400,000 divide 25% of that is 100, correct? So they are netting. Sorry, actually it's a little bit over that because they're paying 30% on that. So they're paying 120 in tax. Leaves them with 280. Yes. 280 divided by 12 is about 20,002. Sorry, 20,002. My apologies. 20,002. Good. 12 twos is 24. You with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
So they're taking home another 20,000 more per month on their salary. Good. But the upkeep that they were getting of 1.6, that upkeep is now being taxed at 25%. So they are paying 400,000 in upkeep. In the first, when I ran the example, I did not point out that in addition to the 4 million that they're getting 1.6 in upkeep. All right. Right. So let me just correct the numbers. So they're taking 250 in their salary, and another 125 roughly in upkeep. So there are 375 in total. Follow the arithmetic? Good. 375 is your take home. Upkeep plus salary. Under the new system, with the upkeep now taxed at 25%, although they're getting a 10% increase on the 400, because with the tax on upkeep, 400,000 tax means that they are getting 1,200 in upkeep, 1.2 million in upkeep. So their upkeep is now 100,000 per month, as against 125,000 per month, which means that 20,000 roughly increase that they are getting on the salary, which is 10% on 4 million, is neutralized by the tax of 25% on the upkeep. They are no better. They are not taking home 1 cent better, 1 cent more.
This is amazing. It's amazing. So in short, they're giving it to you over here, but they're taking back over here. And how is it that people don't, before you answer the question about education, how is it that people don't understand this? Or if they understand, why don't they just, why don't we see and hear the uproar about it?
Well, here's where it gets worse, Rattigan. Here's where it gets worse. Remember now, the new compensation system takes effect it didn't take effect in December or in January. It took effect April of 2022, which means that that person will have to pay, if the person was getting paid in December, right? They have 9 months of back taxes to pay on the upkeep. 9 months of back taxes. This thing is not, I can't make this stuff up. So government, I remember there was this argument that there would be no clawing back of allowances.
Right, yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
The Minister of Finance came and said he could never have said that. People misunderstood him. The same Mr. Master Nigel, and I'm going to call him Master because there's nothing wrong with the word Master.
Yeah.
He said that people he could not have said that there could be no clawback because he does not make tax laws, all right? And the tax laws, so people have had to pay 9 months of retroactive upkeep tax.
Where is the uproar, though? Where is the uproar? Where is the uproar?
We soon see it, all right? I'm not making this stuff up. I normally say to my students, friends, make sure your phone has data because the system on campus may not always be working, all right? Most times work. Because you need to fact check everything I say in real time and challenge me. If I say, no matter what I'm saying, once you have fact checked and found me to be wrong, stop the class and tell me. So I'm inviting your listeners to challenge everything I've said so far.
Okay.
Right?
Talk to us now about the education system quickly, because Herb has some questions, and I think and we're running out of time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So at the top level, our biggest problem in Jamaica with education, in my view, is the low levels of tertiary participation. The small number of people who qualify for and have access to tertiary education. It is that youngster at the tertiary education who is best equipped to create new products and services, to develop apps, and to expand our innovative footprint as a country. But to get to university means that you would have had to perform at a certain level in secondary school. And to perform at a certain level in secondary school, it means you would have had to have a particular start at the primary level. And to have that start at the primary level means that you would need to have a certain foundation at the early childhood level.
Mm-hmm.
In Jamaica, the government does not have a legal responsibility for early childhood education. It was one of the dumb things that we did in 1965 when the Education Act was passed. It gave the government legal responsibility for primary education upward. So most basic schools are private initiatives of poor people trying a thing, all right? Government has tried to support that by saying that they're going to pay for the services of one trained teacher per institution to improve the level and quality of pedagogy. But that process has gone very, very poorly. So we still have many students who, when they're conveyor belted into the primary system and then conveyor belted into the secondary system, fall through the cracks in no time. In some parishes, like in Western Jamaica, the level of dropout at high school is up to, particularly among boys, is up to 70%. Take any school you wish across Jamaica, my friends, and go to fifth form and look at the percentage of girls in any class to the percentage of boys. Although they start almost neck and neck in first form, where each class may have 19 boys and 19 girls, or 18 and 20, whatever, all right, but good. By the time you get to fifth form, you have 7 girls in 10 to 3 boys. By the time you get to 6th form, you have 9 girls to 1 boy.
Whoa.
All right? At university, I tell you this, 40 years ago, 1982, the percentage of graduates, the ratio of males to female graduates was 8 to 2. 8 in every 10 graduates at the University of West Indies in 1982, 1993 were males. And 2 were girls. 2 were females. Now, granted, at that time, the nominal figure, the total, was quite less. So, whereas now you'll have thousands of youngsters graduating, back then you may have a couple hundreds, right? But at present, you know that thing has literally flipped on its head. As at 2022, the percentage of females, and 20%. That has several implications for our society. But let me come back now to the central question about tertiary participation.
Mm-hmm.
Only 3 in 10 graduates, actually less than that, it's 2.7, but you can have a 0.7 of a person, right? Only 3 in 10 high school graduates make it to university or college. 3 in 10. So our rate of tertiary participation is 30%. You know what it is in Barbados? 65%. Trinidad, 65%. A little country like Antigua, 25%. But you know what it is in most organizations of economic development states, places like New Zealand, Australia, and in the Asian countries, you know what their rate of tertiary participation? New Zealand, it's 90%.
Wow.
9 in every 10 graduates who leave high school go on to tertiary. And I want to wrap up. I know you're going.
Mm-hmm.
In 40 years ago, in New Zealand, the rate of tertiary participation was 15%. And the government recognized, and I use New Zealand because New Zealand is roughly our size. The government recognized that if it is to become a developed country, comparable to places like Singapore and Belgium and Denmark, and by the way, Belgium and Denmark still pay people to go to university. Back in the 70s, Michael Manley was paying people to go to university. Belgium and Denmark are still doing that. Denmark is kind of backing off that now, by the way, and reducing the length of university education. Moving from a 4-year degree to a 3-year degree for bachelors. But I'll come back to that maybe another day. But New Zealand decided that if they are to evolve into a developed country, they have to raise the level of tertiary participation. And they embarked on a program called Think Tertiary Early. The best thing that we can compare that to in Jamaica is 2 is better than too many. Think Tertiary Early was a strategy to encourage parents to start planning for university education the moment they decide to become pregnant. Not when they get pregnant, the moment they take the decision that they're going to start a family. All right? And under that program, there is a partnership among the private sector, the government, and the family. The government sets aside a fund for each child, an investment, a nest egg, which is there until the child reaches age 18. It's invested in the financial system. The banks treat that fund differently than they treat other investments. They charge us a lower management fee on it. But parents are encouraged to save towards children's education. Here's what I have made a proposal similar to that. And you can read about it in my book, Education Development. It's called the Child Opportunity Trust Fund. It's not a novel idea. I've simply sought to explain it for application in Jamaica. And I give credit to a young man called Basil Waite, who made a similar proposal in 2008 under the Prime Minister of Bruce Golden. But it didn't go anywhere, all right? I've also written about it in an article. You find it on the Jamaica Observer website. It's called Make Education a Priority. Here's how it works. And here's simple arithmetic. The proposal is that government should set aside the equivalent of $100 in the name of each child within a year of the child's birth, all right? Or the year following the child's birth. So every child born in 2022, that list is complete by the end of January of 2023. Registrar General can now supply that list to the government to say there are these 38,000 children, these 40,000 children born in 2022, this is it, all right? The government then sets aside the equivalent of $100 in the name of each child. Let's call that $100 15,000 Jamaican dollars, all right? And let's use a figure of 40,000 children for ease of arithmetic. Although the number of children born each year has been less than 40,000 over the last several years, 39,000, 38,000, so on. But let's use 40,000. 40,000 children by $15,000 is $600 million. So the proposal is that government would set aside $600 million in an investment fund for identified in each child's name at the various financial institutions. You would break them up so that if the bank fails, right? So, right? But that's $600 million. Let us think about what that $600 million is. Our budget at present is $1 trillion. $1 trillion. 1% of $1 trillion is $10 billion. All right? 1% of $1 trillion is $10 billion. And for those of your audience who might be driving and so $1 trillion, 10% of $1 trillion is 100 billion. All right. So 1% of 100 billion, 1% of 100 billion is 1 billion, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So let's go back again. So the budget is 1 trillion. 10% is 10% is 100 billion. 1% is 10 billion. All right? 1% is 10 billion. It means then that 600 million is 1/10 of 1%, is 1/6 of 1% of the budget. 600 million is 1/6 of 1% of the budget. All right? So in other words, setting aside 600 million is not a stretch or a strain on the budget. Okay, that's 600 million. Follow my arithmetic. The other component of this Child Opportunity Trust Fund is that each parent is being asked to save 100 Jamaican dollars a day. Not 100 US, 100, less than the price of a phone card, less than the price of a beer, less than the price of a pack of condoms, though condoms are important for those who want to prevent procreation, all right? But $100 per day, which translates to $3,000 per month, right? Using 30 days for the month. Let's assume that those 40,000 children, for those 40,000 children, there are 40,000 families, all right? Those who might have to, but just, right, 40,000. So assuming that each parent is saving $100 a day, or $3,000 a month, 40,000 by 3,000 over 18 years. I mentioned 18 earlier, all right? So the fund is an 18-year fund in each case because they finish high school by 18. 40,000 by 3,000 over 18 years translates into $1.4 billion. $1.4 billion. When you add, if that fund is growing at the rate of 6% per annum, and here's the amazing thing: you pay, for those of your listeners who are in Jamaica, you pay about between 44 and 48% per annum on your credit card. That's what the bank is charging you to borrow the bank's money at a credit card. If you take an unsecured loan, you're paying at 19%. All right? So to say the banks are to pay you 6% is to pay at the lowest level.
Mm-hmm.
But the banks are also being invited not to charge for big management fees. That's their contribution. When you add that 600 million that government puts in each time, along with the 1.4 billion that parents put in cumulatively over 18 years, the total yield, total value of the fund after 18 years is 44 billion with a B, $44 billion.
Mm-hmm.
What that would mean is that if you divide that 44 billion by the 40,000 children, each child will be getting 1.4 million, $1,400,000 that they could get as a nest egg to start their university education or to start a business, all right? A supervised business. It's not to buy bling and tire and thing, but to buy something to set up a business, all right? So the point I'm saying is that one solution, and I have two more points I want to do before you run. One solution to the low level of tertiary participation in Jamaica is for government to invest more in education via this child opportunity fund,
mm-hmm.
and to leverage the support of parents. Let me give you two other pieces.
Yeah, for hurry up, no doubt. We're running out of time.
Right. Okay, be quick. Jamaica's rate of murder is 47 per 100,000,
Mm-hmm.
with a tertiary participation of 27%. New Zealand rate of murder is less than one person per 100,000. Singapore, the same thing. So there's a correlation between high levels of tertiary participation,
mm-hmm.
and levels of crime.
Mm-hmm.
So the solution to the crime problem is not more guns for the police. The solution is more investment in education. I'm so sorry.
All right, no worries. Listen, no, Herb wants to jump in, but let me just run two comments by you.
Yes.
One of them is, and we have two very dedicated listeners. One of them wrote, they have 9 months of back pay from which they pay 9 months of taxes. That works as a net benefit. That's regarding the passage of the compensation thing in April, whatever. So they're saying, yeah, they're paying 9 months of taxes, but they're getting 9 months of retroactive pay. So it's a net benefit. So you can counter that if you wish. But let me just make one more comment, and then where is it? Okay, another dedicated listener says, a compliment for this man. He considers the varied perspectives from multiple academic fields to explore the issues. This is brilliant. It's called an interdisciplinary approach in solving problems. All right. So if you want to respond to the net gain, net loss, or whatever, and then Herb has a question, and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
So that colleague who gets 9 months of retroactive pay is getting 9 months of retroactive pay at the rate of 10% on the salary, right? If the annual salary is $4 million, that retroactive pay you're getting at 10% is $400,000 you're getting for the year, right?
But you're paying the taxes at a higher rate.
It's not even for the year. You're getting 10% for 3 months. So you prorate it for 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
So if the monthly figure turns out to be about 12 threes is 36. That's 360. So before tax, they're getting something like 38,000. But if you accept that when you pay 25% on your upkeep, you're losing 400,000. That's a tax. The 400,000 in retroactive pay that you're getting is neutralized by that. So whether it's 1 month or 12 months, the 25% tax
on the upkeep, right? Yeah.
Neutralize the 10% increase on your $4 million.
So you're still going to end up with less.
So, you are either less or no better off.
Okay. And the promise was that you'd be better off.
And the promise was that nobody would be better off, would be
Right.
worse off.
Right. Herb, you want to go ahead and ask a question? We only have about 7 minutes, 6 minutes or so. Unmute.
His mic might be closed.
Okay, thank you. Based on the losses suffered when it was discovered that 124 million was missing from the education budget, and we're not sure how much money was missing with the previous Minister of Education, right? Is there any audit or any calculation into how much was the education ministry setback in service to the children of Jamaica, in educating the children of Jamaica?
That's a profoundly important question. I really appreciate the question from both of you as well as from the listener. Because and the reason I say that is that the way corruption is treated in Jamaica, some money disappears, leaks, is taken, and we go on as though nothing goes wrong. Corruption means that there are fewer resources for schools. You know what a teacher told me? That at the beginning of the school year, each teacher is given a single dege whiteboard marker, not a pack of markers with different colors. Each teacher is given one whiteboard marker. And when that whiteboard marker expires, it's finished, the ink in it finished by the middle of October, she has to find her whiteboard markers for the rest of the year. You know what corruption does? It deprives schools of resources. Another teacher tells me that there are days when she decides, when she gives her lunch, she shares her lunch with two youngsters who they're not on par, but they don't have the food. They don't have food. You know what corruption does? It deprives children of nutrition. One of the big scandals in the Ministry of Education was that at Nutrition Products Limited, the place that prepares and provides food to school, the executives were living high on the hog, so to speak, whilst food was being denied to the schools. That's what corruption does. There are many schools which do not have access to internet service, either because they are so far out on where the line stops, or the bandwidth in the particular area in which they are is weak. The solution to which would be, among other things, to improve the level of bandwidth support, which would come from investment in the network. What the corruption does is that it undermines government's capacity to do those things. But it extends beyond education. Corruption also deprives Miss Matilda from getting IV at the hospital, or deprives Mas Joe and Miss Jenny from getting the potholes fixed in their community. Ultimately, corruption undermines development. And all that money that's gone missing, we should have a system, my friends, where once the person is identifiable and the amount determined, the person should be liable to repay it. It can't just go like that. And until we have that high level of consequence, my good friend Keith Duncan, former president of the PSOJ, said that one of Jamaica's problems is that we are a consequence-free environment. Things go wrong and nobody's held accountable.
Yeah. We have another guest coming on, but I don't know if she's here yet. So, Doc, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna keep chatting because I find it to be highly interesting, and based on what I'm reading, people are finding it interesting as well. And if it's not an imposition on your time, we'll just go through the commercial break, and then when we get our guest, then at that point we'll terminate our interview or our discussion with you. But
Yeah.
it's been for me it's an eye opener. Some of the things that you're telling me, because the way things are advertised in Jamaica by the government regarding certain programs, what you're telling us is, it's one of those. It's like a three-card Monte thing. You can't win. You'll never win. You'll get the perception of thinking that you're going to win, but
Yes.
at the end of the day, you will not win. So again, for the people listening via radio, we're gonna go through the commercial break. Mute your radio. You can come over to the streaming side and you can listen to us commercial free and without any disturbance. Otherwise, you're going to hear the commercials. Herb, you have another question for the professor?
Yeah, in the sense that there was no legal responsibility for early childhood education, and there is no audit system to say how they're going to put back or refund to the education programs those monies. The other thing that prevents learning for children is a lack of breakfast or lunch. How are we
Yes.
doing with breakfast and lunch programs?
All right. Excellent point. Question. So there is a clear relationship between a child's nutrition and the child's capacity to learn. All right. Brain development requires in those early stages the right balance of protein and protein in various forms and fruits and exercise and play. Governments in most developed countries have a school feeding program, which is a response to the reality that many families are unable to provide adequate nutrition for the children. In Jamaica, we have had a school feeding program for years, going back to the 80s, from the days of Nutribun, where you get the milk and the cheese, milk and the bun, to now where there was a breakfast program. In 2019, the government decided that this 3-day per week program would be expanded to 5 days. And there was a big announcement about this increase from 3 to 5 days. But as you said a moment ago, my brother, it was all about PR, because government did not add 1 cent to the school feeding budget to enable schools to add those 2 days. All right? So schools were now saddled with the responsibility to provide food for 5 days on a budget that was already inadequate to provide food for 3 days. And principals were being hauled over the coals when they were getting complaints from parents. When the school decided that they can't go 5 days, they can only go 4. And you know how they were able to go to 4? They went begging the shopkeepers in the community and begging the parents who are able to bring something. All right, good. And alongside that PR handling of that situation, we then discovered that at Nutrition Products Limited, because the Auditor General's report of 2021, which found that there was massive malfeasance and might I call it leakage, it went back to 2019. This is a scandalous thing, you know. This is a scandalous thing. So what we now have are many hungry children. I hear of cases, but teachers tell me that there are students in their school feeding program who will some days not eat the lunch because they have a little brother at home who is not yet at school age, for whom mommy said he must carry the lunch today. All right? That's his contribution to the family for the day, to carry home his school feeding lunch to his little brother. And what that highlights is the need for a more expansive program of support to families when it comes to nutrition. Because that little boy at home who's not ready for school, his brain is being deprived. And so when he's ready for school, his ability to learn is compromised. Of course, we have to deal with the problem of irresponsible parenting. And the records should show, however, that the rate of teenage pregnancy in Jamaica in 2022 is lower than what it was in 1976. The percentage of teenagers who are carrying children to full-term birth and are producing children is less than it was in 76. So two is better than too many has worked, but we still have a large swatch of irresponsible parents who can do more for their families, but are not. But I tell you more, that there are a lot of parents on PATH who take the PATH money, but don't use it for the well-being of their children.
Let me just say to the viewing audience that you're looking at only me, and that's because we're trying to reach out to the second guest, and it would be distracting to have that going on on the main screen. So what you can, you're listening to the professor and you're listening to Herb. Professor, let me ask you this question. Give us your sense, and it's an open question, general question. Give us your sense of the recent polls vis-a-vis leadership.
Yes. The poll, so there was a Don Anderson poll, which among other things found that the percentage of the apathetic voter, the percentage of people who choose neither party, had increased slightly. The same in the case of the Blue Dot poll.
Mm-hmm.
The Anderson poll also found that the PNP had moved ahead of the JLP within the margin of error by about 1 point, coming from a position a year ago when the PNP was behind by about 18 points. But in the Blue Dot poll, it was also found that 52% of voters said they can't trust the Prime Minister, and 50% say they can't trust the government. And in several parishes, there was a significant turnaround in terms of support for the opposition PNP. However, this is an overarching picture. However, the loss of support for the governing JLP is not the same as the gain for the opposition PNP. In other words, whilst the government's support has plummeted, the support for the PNP has barely grown. And what that suggests to me are a couple of things. One, that the population is looking for more than what they see in the two political parties. And among the things for which they're looking, I contend, is a new approach.
Unfortunately, we lost Professor Canute Thompson.
No, I'm not. Your volume is very low for me this time.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, hearing you better now.
Yeah. Yeah. Folks, we're joined by Miss Patricia Duncan-Sutherland, who is the PNP's co-chair or what do you call it, for the gender and social
Deputy spokesperson.
deputy
Deputy spokesperson
spokesperson, right?
and senior
Businesswoman
person.
extraordinaire.
Mhm.
Right. Welcome to Reason with Rattigan. You told me that you've watched the program many times before, and I'm happy to hear that. Um,
Yes, man.
in fact, you
You're
even said
popular in Jamaica, you know, Mr. Rattigan.
I'm
Come
popular
on,
in
man.
Jamaica.
Popular guy.
Not so sure about all of that. In some quarters, I'm famous, and in some quarters, I'm infamous. So,
Yeah.
but
That's also
welcome,
true.
welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, give us a sense of who Trisha is, because some people know you, a lot of people know you, but by the same token, a lot of people don't. And can you give us a sense
Mhm.
of who you are, and what are you doing as leader of the or chairperson of the women's movement of the PNP? And then we'll move on to the to the spokesperson piece for gender and social
Yeah.
transformation.
So I am Patricia Duncan-Sutherland, daughter of D.K. Duncan and Joan Duncan. And so my life, I just did a video the other day about how it is we as Duncan children came to be who we are, and what must have been the thing that brought mommy and daddy together. Because they were both members of the Black Power movement in Canada when they met in Canada and came to Jamaica and were drivers of the Black Power movement in Jamaica with Walter Rodney. And so we always grew up with this great sense of social justice, great sense of fairness, and understanding that all people are equal. And so that value system really has driven how our lives have developed and who we have become. It drove even how mommy created, because our family, mommy started JMB, Jamaica Money Market Brokers Limited.
Right.
And right, and that was started on the basis of allowing ordinary Jamaicans to be able to invest as if they had big money, make their money grow and work for them, just like how big money people can make their money grow and work for them. And start on the business side, and then on our social side and how we see ourselves as a part of community, we continue to give back. And for me, that has been politics. I was a caretaker for Southeast Clarendon for 10 years. I promised them 10 years, built up the PNP organization in that constituency. And now we're in a process of handing over. Now moving on to Southeast St. Anne, where I'm looking to represent the people of Southeast St. Anne and the different profile of a constituency in terms of politically, but essentially creating a sense of real people power where it matters. All right, that's who I am. And so my work has been in government. I have served on many boards for Early Childhood Commission. I'm currently a commissioner. I'm a commissioner on National Crime and Violence Prevention. Served on the EGOV board, on the JSIP board. I served as project manager for Unite for Change, on working with Peter Bunting when he was Minister of National Security, and that had many successes in terms of shifting the mindset of Jamaicans and shifting the way that communities interacted with each other, with people interacted within communities.
Somebody in the chat asked, "Are you sister to Donna and Keith Duncan?" I guess the answer is yes.
Yes, Donna and Keith are twins. They are my older brother and sister, and I like to remind them that I'm older than me. So I'm actually just coming from a conference because I'm also chair of the JMB Joan Duncan Foundation.
You're
And
very,
we
very
were
busy.
in our Conversations for Greatness conference, because that's another way in which we are trying to impact the mindset of Jamaicans. If we can begin to see how great we are, if we can begin to confront our own intrinsic belief systems that drive the discrimination and the disparities within our country, then we can really begin to make a difference.
Okay. What would you say has been your greatest professional political achievement to date?
Wow, that's a big one. I never really think of it like that. greatest professional/political, well, professional achievement. Let me start on that side. It's easier. The biggest wow thing I did was when I did the project manager for carrying German Public. We did that in 3 months, and nobody in the industry believed that we could do that. And that was a really good deal where Jamaica Venture Fund had initially invested in GMB. We managed to do a buyout of the shareholdings of the partners in Jamaica Venture Fund, and put GMB on the stock exchange. And we did it in record time, 3 months. So I was very proud of that one.
Mm-hmm. And
Apart from
political?
just generally proud of GMB, and because I've been the designer of the operations of GMB, that's been my role in the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then now on the political side, it's hard to say one big thing, but what I can tell you is that while I'm doing this campaign amongst the delegates in Southeast St. Anne, persons who have worked with me in Southeast Clarendon have been my greatest ambassadors. And when they begin to tell the stories of how the interactions and how the expressions of the principles of the People's National Party of equality have been expressed in our relationship and how it has transformed their own life, I really feel good. You know, there is one young lady who, when we started working, she was not working. She had come back from the US with her son, and she didn't even see herself as being able to do something different with her life. She realized that she could do her GED because she was a US citizen. She got her high school diploma. She started working in a call center. She worked out a way to build her house, and she's a big success for her. You know, there is Nzinga, who's unfortunately got her cut off by the police.
Mm-hmm.
But Nzinga herself, as a human being, beginning to learn how her gift of expression can help her to realize and create a different life for herself, and how she feels better about herself day by day, despite all of the challenging experiences she has had. Things like that make it worth it for me.
You know, the person in the chat room, Carolyn, a dear friend of mine, she said she were classmates at Manchester High School. I'm not sure if she was a class. Did you go to Manchester High School?
I went to Manchester High with Carolyn, who that? What's her last name?
Her last name is Ashman.
Okay. Carolyn, so Carolyn, you never make it to the reunion. I never make it to the reunion. They just had a fantastic reunion. I'm in a chat group, and everybody's just showing off and how they had a wonderful time, and I never get to go because I was busy in Southeast St. Anne. It's lovely though.
You hear that, Carolyn?
The Bachelor's Dice Love Zone. It's lovely to be in that chat room.
So, Carolyn, you have to go link your classmate at some other time. But yeah, that's one of the things we do here now. We make connections as well, you know. So.
Yeah, man. Carolyn, the number 876-564.
Let me write it down for her. Hold on a second. All right, go ahead. 876-564.
2818. Send me a WhatsApp.
All right. I'll pass it on to her. No, let me ask you this. You know, she's a class of Ward, Carolyn Ward. She was at that. She's
Ward.
married. Yeah.
Okay, yes, Carolyn. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Class of 78. All right.
78. She would have been in Donna's class.
Okay.
Donna. Yeah.
No, you talked about the being proud of the things that you were able to do with the PNP. But every political party comes with baggage, comes with deficiencies, comes with albatross around their necks. So the question I'd like to ask you at this point is, if you could change something about the PNP today, just tell me one thing that you would change and how you would change it.
I would change how the role of the group has evolved. The people are to be at the center of the party. And because we did not have enough engagement with the groups and maintaining the groups as a center. What ended up happening is that groups became just the creator of delegates for voting purposes. And so they ended up being used primarily by the leadership rather than being empowered by the leadership to have real people power.
Mm-hmm.
How I would change that right now, because I can't go back in history,
Right.
is, and I'm working on it to work with the party leadership because I believe nothing is impossible. And I believe that our Mark Golden sees this as well and believes Mark and Dave and Angela in real people power. So working with them through the Political Education Commission, because I'm chair of that commission, to work out how to get the information disseminated to the wider groups so that, because information is power, right? So if they know what how they can add value to our policies, add value to our discussions, then they will become more empowered and more engaged. So I'm working that through to put that mechanism in place. It's not simple because we are now 40,000 plus members.
Mm-hmm.
One good thing that has changed that will shift that as well is that we, in the last conference, we voted to say one man, one vote. For each member, each group member will now have a vote in the election of officers of the party. So that will reduce how group members, how group delegates and groups are used. And now we'll begin to refocus our efforts on making the group function as a means of communication within a community.
Okay. You know, Dr. Canute Thompson was here just before you, and he has a thesis, and there is some credibility to it, maybe a lot of credibility to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that in Jamaica, like a lot of places, the ordinary voter, because you were just talking about people power within the party. But the thesis is that there is no real power within the party. The real power is outside the party, and that real power is private business, and that private business is PSOJ. And they're saying, look, the ordinary person in the street, once in every 4 or 5 years, for the general election, they go and they vote. But they don't have any influence on policies that are made concerning the country, or very little, including, go ahead, please.
No problem. No,
Yeah,
I'm listening. It's very interesting point. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Including, social groups, NGOs, and all these other groups in Jamaica. They're saying that the influence comes from funding, and the PSOJ has a ton of funding. The ordinary person in the street doesn't have any funding, and so what happens is invariably they will vote based on how attractive the party is, but the party will exert governance based on directions from PSOJ. So, for example, if PSOJ has a project that they're interested in or whatever, the government is going to pay attention to PSOJ more so than 20 people in the community raising cane or whatever. Then the hell with that. And we see this. We see this when you start talking about beach rights, for example, where hoteliers in Jamaica, foreign and local, they purchase lands around government beaches, and the regular Jamaican cannot access those beaches because you have to go on people's personal property. We see the case, for example, out in Blue Lagoon, where the government owns the lagoon itself, and also a private road leading to the lagoon, but all of the land surrounding Blue Lagoon is privately owned. And recently, they set up a checkpoint, and regular Jamaicans cannot access the beach. Now, I'm being told by sources that people of influence, people of wealth, they're accessing Blue Lagoon via watercraft. Mm-hmm. So the question that I say all of that to say this is that how does the PNP govern knowing that, okay, they have a population here that they have to serve, but at the same time, they have the business community that they also have to respond to. And if the business community says, I'd like you to do this, do they dare say no? Especially if there's a conflict, like if the people they're asking for something and the business interest they want to do something else. How do you manage that?
All right, the two things. And it is true that money on the face of it, right, is the source of power. Because that's basically the argument here. All right? But the whole point of politics, and the whole point, first of all, how did we get beach access in Jamaica in the first place? That's now being reversed, that we now need to stand up for again. How did we get it?
You mean the regular
It was through
Jamaican?
the regular Jamaicans. We got it because in the 70s, this was one of the big things that my father and Tony Spalding and all them work on. My father said, and all of them in the PNP, that this was not going to work. And we are going to change the laws. And we do have beach access laws. Now it is, do we need to strengthen those laws? What do we need to do? Because people power, in fact, actually can work if you elect the people who reflect people power and use the power that they are given for the people who give them the power. Right? Now, the argument that money influences everything. Money influences everything, we'd still be slaves in Jamaica. Don't forget that.
Yeah. Don't mind me, I'm
Because
looking for
people
something.
power
You
that
mentioned.
ended slavery.
No, don't mind me.
Huh?
I'm looking for. I have a file here. I'm looking for the beach access thing, but I'm listening to you very, very carefully. Okay, I found it.
Yeah, because we still be slaves in Jamaica. So if money influenced everything, as I say, that same beach access law, if money influenced everything, we wouldn't have maternity leave act. If money influenced everything, we would not have had the free education act, the free education that came about in the 70s. So there is a situation right here now where we feel like there's no real people power. And that's part of why I say one of the things that we need to fix in the PNP is reigniting that power. Because people power comes out of organizing people and getting people to act together for a purpose. That's what it comes out of. In the same way, if PSOJ was all over the place and acting in disparate ways, there would be no power even with all of that money. There'd be power for one person to influence one particular thing. But when you act together in unison, that's where you get the power, the collective power. Our job as a party, I would have to agree with, but the difference between the PNP and the JLP is who do they listen to and who draws the strings. And our job is to make sure that people's voices are represented in our politics and that we listen effectively and we create the ways for them to be able to express their voice so we can hear it. Because it cannot be expressed in our policy if there is no mechanism for us to hear what they think. And that's our job. That's why we did SDC. And that's why we believe in CDCs. As I'm doing my work on the ground now in Southeast Santana, I said, guys, we're giving up some of our power because we're not organizing ourselves into the community development councils. We're not organizing ourselves. They have their farmers groups, but they don't have enough information about how the farmers groups can take advantage of what's available in the institutions for them. Our job is to make sure that people are organized and have the information so that they can express their needs and express their vision and express their desires, and that their desires and their needs, all of the people, including the private sector, inclusive of the private sector, all of the needs are expressed in policy, and that there's balance in policy so that all Jamaicans can have a successful life, how they define success.
Okay. If I heard you correctly, you talked about people power and people coming together to express themselves, and that expression will find itself in a policy. But what I didn't hear you say was the implementation of that policy. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Puerto Rico Beach. Now, that
Yeah.
beach was owned by Kaiser Bauxite, and I think the government had some control over it, and it was a public beach. Now, it fell in disrepair, and under the PNP government, guardsman, Mr. Kenny Benjamin, he was able to get a long-term lease. He spent millions of US dollars, but maybe not millions, but he spent a tremendous amount of money to refurbish the whole thing.
Yeah.
And what did he do after that? He made it so that on certain days, ordinary Jamaicans would not be allowed access to that beach. Now, that agreement came during the PNP reign of governance. So how do you explain that then to someone when you say, well, we changed the laws so that people could have beach access? And you say, well, wait a minute, if you change it, then how come I can't access Puerto Rico Beach whenever I want to, even though it's now privately owned and I can pay? Because you're saying that it's a paid beach. You have to pay to go into use pay entrance and use the facilities. And somebody in Jamaica said, ordinary Jamaicans, I want to go, I have the money, why can't I go? This is my country.
Well, from my own perspective, that has to be challenged. No, everything that is done by a PNP government, I will not agree with. And there are sometimes that we're going to have to challenge it and to organize people to challenge. I don't agree that there should ever be allowed to be a day where locals cannot access. I actually have another situation with another, what do you call it? Attraction, not attraction, but area in a tourist resort that I have some association, not direct association with, and I am now challenging them on that. The reason is that is our cruise ship day, it's too crowded, and if locals come on the cruise ship day, it's a problem. We have to have a different solution. And I'm challenging it. Some people think it's a logical thing. They're doing it as a logical thing, crowd control, managing, because we have to make money for tourism, et cetera, et cetera. But if those things are going to happen, it would first of all have to be an agreement with the communities that would be using the space, right? Because it could be an agreement with the communities to say, okay, that's a tourism day, it's a cruise ship day, we're going to agree that because of the cruise ship and because we want the cruise ships, we want to give it, that could be an agreement. But it can't be imposed unilaterally. There has to be agreement with communities.
Yeah, and why would you even agree to something like that? I mean, it's a big beach. I mean, I've seen pictures of it, and even if you have cruise ship people coming on, I mean, why should you well, first of all, in a lot of the Caribbean countries, there's no private ownership of beaches. That's a natural right for the people to use that resource. So Jamaica has seen it fit. Go ahead.
Was supposed to be, but there are some clause in our law that does not allow us to implement it in the same way that Antigua does, and I'm not sure what that is.
Well, let me. Since you say you're not sure, let me tell you about two things. One is a law called the Prescription Act of 1882, and basically it says that if you've been using a waterway, it's a use of any water, right? That for more than 20 years, for a period of 20 years or more, then you have a right, an easement, and it's deemed absolute and indefeasible, meaning that it cannot be abrogated, it cannot be defeated, you cannot pass any law to say, okay, we're gonna, word I'm looking for, we're gonna get rid of this law. The Prescription Act is still on the books. Then there's another one called the Beach Control Act of 1956. And what's interesting is that they don't describe a beach. At common law, there's no description of a beach. It's called a foreshore, and it's between low water mark and high water mark. Now, what it says is that if you have, and it's very involved. It's very draconian as well, because it's saying that if you have private property, right, and it's beachfront, you can do whatever you want to do with it, including preventing people from using the beach. But there's a section in it which is an escape clause. It says here that, let me find it for you. It says that the minister and when they say minister, they're referring, at this point, they're referring to the prime minister, because back in 1956, they didn't have a minister.
Premier, it was a premier.
Right, but now NEPA and a few other agencies responsible for maintaining and upgrading, controlling the beaches, they fall under the office of the prime minister. So by extension, the prime minister is the minister that they're referring to. And it says here that in this act that the prime minister, even though this Beach Control Act of 1956 is draconian, that he has a right, but with the stroke of a pen, to override anything in this thing. And then it says here further that if he does so, that you cannot take him to court. It says right here, it's second to last, section 55. It says here, the decision of the minister as to whether such license should be granted or refused, or as to whether an order should be disallowed or not, shall be final and shall not be questioned in any legal proceeding. So why is it that I don't hear the PNP talking to the prime minister and say, listen, minister, with the stroke of a pen, you can change the Beach Control Act of 1956 in the way it's applied now and free up the beaches so that all Jamaicans will have general access, not prescriptive access or limited access, but general access to all beaches in Jamaica. Why hasn't that been done by the PNP? Or is that something, is that a fight that they decide that they're not gonna pick that fight?
I cannot answer, but I can't tell you that they're not going to pick that fight, and I can't tell you why they haven't done it yet. Okay. I know it is something that is of concern that we have discussed, but have not discussed it in detail.
Right. I just found the section. I just found the section. No, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
I was under the impression, I'm getting a bit of a schooling here, that it didn't come prepared to talk about beach control.
That's fine. No, we segue a lot around here.
Schooling for you because I actually thought that we had done something about the laws in the 70s. No. Right? But it was clearly just action in the 70s that gave the access to the beaches, because there was access given in the 70s to the beaches, but I actually thought something was done about it. No. So it's definitely something that I would raise in our circles to say we would need to look at this to see how it is that we are going to fix this, because it is a real problem. It's not just for the Seeker Beach, it's a problem. It was a problem for the beaches in Portland, as you said, it's a problem for the Blue Lagoon. Trying to remember the name of the beach in Portland, and the people stopped them from privatizing that beach. I don't remember the name of it now, but a good friend of mine was on that. And I know that there is a growing movement around this beach access. So it is something that we definitely have to look at, and that I think we need to consider whether we should, what is the law that we're going to put in place to give access to Jamaicans to beaches.
All right, I want to get to your pet areas, children's rights and gender issues and the position in the party. But before I do that, let me ask you this question. It's been bandied about for years that the diaspora is going to get a seat, or they're trying to get the diaspora get a seat in the Senate. And my recollection is that back in, I think, 2010, there was a committee made up of PNP and JLP members, and they agreed that, yes, the diaspora should have a seat in the Senate. And what they didn't tell, I'm talking about both parties now, successive governments, what they didn't tell the public was that, look, in order for this to happen, you're going to have a constitutional amendment followed by a referendum. They didn't tell anyone that. They just said, yeah, you should have it. And people hear what they want to hear. And what people heard was that, yeah, we're going to get a seat, right? And when you start asking the hard questions, and you start stripping the veneer off of things, and you start realizing that, wait a minute, this thing is not going to happen. Now, this was 2010 that they talked about it. And since then, both parties have said, yeah, the diaspora, we're all one, and you support us, and during COVID, blah, 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 blah. And so you have to get a seat. Now, how is that going to work? Because it's for us in the diaspora, it's all talk at this point. Before it wasn't talk. It sounded like something genuine that it was going to happen. But now that the cat's out of the bag and people are saying, well, wait a minute, hold on. When are we going to hear anything about this in Parliament? And when is this referendum going to take place? And the answer is, we don't know. So do you think it's high time that both parties say, you know what, diaspora, we can't tell you when you're going to get a seat, and we don't even want to entertain it? Pretty much the same way they talk.
Don't have a position on this. Again, you asked me a question, Will, that I do not have a position on.
All right.
And that I have not done enough research on it
All right.
to tell you if I agree that the diaspora should get a seat or not.
All right. Let me ask you a question.
In a sense, what I can tell you is that we currently have a committee for constitutional reform now. So those who believe that it should be done should be looking to make a submission to that committee to say we would like the amendments done to allow for that. Those who believe that it should be done.
All right.
I personally can tell you that I have a position as to whether the diaspora should have a seat in the Senate or not. I can't say if I agree or disagree because I'd have to look at that. There are just different views around the diaspora and to what extent should the diaspora be involved in the affairs of the country if they live outside of the country.
So you don't want to see me in that? You don't want to see me in the Senate? You don't think we'll have a good audition in the Senate?
Well, right now, maybe if you moved home, you could be in the Senate.
I am home. I don't have to move home. I'm home. Jamaica's my home.
Oh, you live in Jamaica now?
See my place here, 41 Penwood Crescent. My place that.
Oh, okay.
My place that, yeah. 41 Penwood Crescent. Yeah, and you can ask Tony Hilton about it too, because he's the MP. He knows me quite well. Yeah. Let me shift the focus now and talk to you about the women's movement now in the PNP.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't know, and forgive me for not, doing more homework about this. But I didn't know until we started talking that there was such a thing as the women's movement. Because you know why? I didn't hear a lot. You hear about the YO, and
Did you hear about it? Have you ever heard about the Maternity Leave Act?
Yes.
The women's movement caused that.
Well,
Beverly Anderson Manley Duncan. You know that lady?
mm-hmm.
You ever hear of that lady?
Yes.
She was the first president of the PNP Women's Movement. She formed the PNP Women's Movement. It is actually a stronger arm of the party than the YO, especially at this point.
Well, because you're the president, so.
No, just simply because the YO has gone through several changes of leadership over the past few years. And they are, as a younger organization, they haven't, in the last few years, they've had some struggles with keeping themselves organized. So they're in a rebuilding phase right here now. But the PNP Women's Movement has actually driven more reform in Jamaica and has had a very strong voice in the context of the rights of women in Jamaica and worldwide. Actually, we were one of the first countries to have equal pay for equal work as an act in Jamaica because of the PNP Women's Movement.
Tell me a little bit more about the women's movement and the I have it right here, and the legislative priority for fathers to play a crucial role as partners in the raising of children.
In the context of?
In the context of, it says here that you believe that this should be a legislative priority as fathers, and it's in the context of the paternity leave.
Paternity Leave Act, yes. Mm-hmm. We actually believe that we should have a Paternity Leave Act, and it should be on equal footing with the Maternity Leave Act. If we really want to change the gender dynamic and really transform a country socially, because that is one particular space of discrimination, of inequality in our country between man and woman. Then you have to change the social construct. And your laws have to provide for that shift in the social construct to understand that men and women are equally important in the raising of children and in the parenting and in the creation of family. I mean, we are coming out of a history of slavery where our families were separated and torn apart for the purposes of creating a commodity of a human being to work as a slave. So our history, our learned behaviors is not one of creating positive families. So we have to be very purposeful around creating that positive family structure within our country. Otherwise, we will continue to have this idea of single mothers and single fathers. So we did some things towards that because the Bastardy Act, which again, the Women's Movement played a strong role in the repeal of that Bastardy Act. That at least created a space where every human being was seen as a legitimate citizen of our country. So that carried us to one space. Now we need to create a space where the family unit is seen as a legitimate unit, and the role of father and mother is seen as legitimate and is supported by our laws in our country. So those are some of the kinds of things. We believe that if we're going to do that social transformation in our country, we need to have that army of social workers working together within our communities, with families, and within our schools to help us to reshape our belief systems and around how we relate to each other as human beings. And is that we relate to each other within our families. What does parenting, positive parenting look like in our country? Right now, it has some very negative aspects to parenting that we see as expression of love. We feel that we have to toughen up our children, so we lick our children to toughen them up instead of help them to create wholesome human beings and peaceful human beings.
One of the things that has been said about you is that that in terms of the women's movement is that you wanted to be more active in supporting families impacted by food insecurity. And I mean, that's very noble. I mean, when I read that, I was like, oh, this is like really ambitious, because that is said in the context that it was a global food report that said an estimated 2 million Jamaicans or more. And this report was, I think it's like last year, that more than 2/3 of the population are unable to afford a healthy diet. And then you started talking about food security, and then we look at what the government is trying to do with some of the most arable lands in Jamaica, where they're being, I don't know, leased out for to build houses. And so the question is, how do you? Let me turn the floor. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, man. So, in Jamaica, like where I am now working in Southeast St. That's the primary economic activity there is farming, but it's not effectively supported by our government. And successive governments have tried. I mean, we have RADA, we have JCEP that have their READY program with farm roads, etc. But we still have not somehow gotten it. And back in the 70s, we had AMC and we had the leasing of lands. So we had some programs, but we still haven't gotten it right. And we have to work through and to understand that we can't import all of the food that we need. Because if we try to do that, look at the crisis with Ukraine and the impact that it had on us, even with flour and rice and the price of those things, right? So we need to find a way to really make this agricultural sector work for us and work for the people who are the participants, the small farmers, right? Because these people are independent farmers. And I would dare say, add to that, make the marijuana farming work for us as well. Ganja farming, we have almost like we're ready to give it away to the Canadians who want to import ganja rather than to work out how to make it work easy for us. Instead, we're telling people that they have to, if you want to be a ganja farmer, you have to put up 20 camera, I have to put up a big fence around the place. I don't know who we protected the ganja from, right?
Right.
We need to work through those regulations are not for the small man, them is for big man, and they are not regulations that will allow us to participate effectively
Well,
in that thing.
let me stop you there because we have online Herb Nelson. He was one of the panelists. He was, my co-host a while ago, and we lost him. So he's calling in because he has a particular interest in children's rights, and I know that's a big part of what you do. And
Yeah.
so, Herb, you want to go ahead? You have a question for? Go ahead, Herb.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hearing you. Hi,
You not
Herb. How
hearing
are you?
me?
No, she's hearing you. She's hearing you.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. Just this past week, we did a program, Human Rights and the Family, and one of the things we are particularly interested in Jamaica about is the fact that Jamaican children are exposed to not just local predators, but also predators from abroad. All because the so-called children's welfare department or social services department have failed to properly vet people who are volunteering or voluntarily working in the system. And I just wanted to find out from you, what role are the police supposed to be playing in not just the vetting, but in working alongside social services to investigate the numerous pregnancies that are at the Jubilee Hospital down there in Kingston, especially where we saw Juliet Cuthbert, I believe her name is, was posing with some of these underage mothers, instead of investigating who the fathers are. So, I mean, the question is, how are we protecting these young girls in our society?
All right. So that's a very, very big question and have very many different parts. So let me try to break it down. First one, what is the role of the police in terms of investigating teenage pregnancies when they come to Jubilee, and why is it that they can't arrest those fathers immediately? So, two things. One, and I believe it was a case in the case with Juliet Cuthbert, the father of that child was also a minor. Right? Now,
Yeah.
how are we going to deal with two minors who have slept together and created a child is going to have to be different from how you deal with an adult who has taken advantage of a child from our own perspective. So that now goes into the child diversion program which we have, and where there is counseling, and then they need to be given support as to how they are going to then parent that child along with the support of their family, and then to be able to work through protection and to work through how do they get to the next stage of their life as adults without this addition to their lives becoming the thing that stops them from expressing their full potential. So that's how the state would have to help that child, those two children, because there would be two children who would be in that situation. Now you have the situation of the big man then with the little girls. Two, we do have a problem in Jamaica of the gun man then, the gun man then, calling the little girl then and sleeping with them and then impregnating them. That little girl or that little girl's mother is going to be in fear. And that has to be managing that and getting that. You remember, informal cadet syndrome is still a big problem in Jamaica. So getting that information out of that little girl or that little girl's mother or family is going to be difficult, because there is for some of those people, there is nowhere else for them to go except to go home to that space where that Don man still exists. So for those, the approach is going to have to be, how do we stop the Don man from existing so that those children, those girls don't have to have that experience? And then how some women are able to send them away and then report these children as missing and send them away to different spaces with different family members to protect them from the Don man, right? How the state is going to respond to that, I'm not sure. But one thing for sure is we do, and I come back to it again, need an army of social workers in those communities. Because maybe even a conversation with that Don man while that Don man is working on being reformed may stop that behavior from occurring, because he may also have a daughter. Some of this is going to have to be a negotiation and a reform of behavior. It's not going to government bad, it's not going to solve every problem. Right? So there's that case. Then there's a case, for example, of the case that just came up in court this week, of the father who sent his 12-year-old daughter to sleep with an American man, right? And both father and American man, somebody got wind of it, reported to police, both were arrested. And the American man was, the foreigner, I think it was American, was sentenced this week, and I'm not sure where the father's case is at now. All right? So there's that case. And how now do we get more people to report those cases, inclusive of the Don man, and to not be afraid of reporting them so that the police can act? And for the people of Jamaica to begin to understand that it is not acceptable for a big man to want to sleep with a 12-year-old girl. Because there are some people who believe this is okay in Jamaica. And so we need some retraining, and this is coming from way back when. There are some communities in Jamaica where it is the belief that the father and the uncle, all of the men in the family, have a right to sleep with a girl once she has her first period within that family. And this is a cultural belief. We have to identify these families. We have to do the work. Again, I say, we need an army of social workers on the ground. This is not going to happen from mandating a law in Parliament. It's not going to change from having an organization that's sitting in an office. It's going to change from having people on the ground, working with people on the ground, for them to be able to see a different possibility for their lives, to understand the impact of that belief on that child and what's happening. It's going to take real work on the ground to transform our society.
Right.
And then there's another issue, the issue of our sex offenders registry, right? And is this registry being adequately updated? Is it being updated with people from overseas who come into our country? Do we have any requirements? What do we need to do on this? We need to strengthen that, and we need to strengthen how that is used when we are employing people in schools, when we are employing people in the CPFSA, which is our Child Protection and Family Services organization, and all of that. So those are the areas. I don't know if I answered any of your questions.
No, I tell you what, you've raised some interesting points. We could talk for days about this, but we're running out of time. Herb, do you have something else you want to ask Miss Duncan-Sutherland?
Yes, because
we only have 2 minutes left.
Okay, the police are aware that there's a U.S. law that will prosecute U.S. citizens who come to Jamaica specifically to have relations with underage children, male or female.
Yes.
And so, as a matter of fact, the case I'm aware of is where that citizen only got 3 months in Jamaica, but when they returned to the United States, they were rearrested and they got 10 years. So,
Yeah.
We have 20 seconds.
are you aware of any other cases like that?
I'm not aware, but I know that I worked with them with the child trafficking, implementing the child trafficking law in Jamaica when I worked at the Ministry of National Security and the Unite for Change program. And we are looking at what kind of relationships we can strengthen between us and other countries to minimize that in Jamaica.
Look, we're going to have to leave it there. Ms. Duncan-Sutherland, thank you so much for coming on. I wish you all the best in your future political endeavors, and make this your home. We're going to call you to come back because there's so much to talk about. But thank you for coming on today and sharing your thoughts with us.
May 31st, we're going to have a summit on domestic violence against women and sexual abuse against girls, so that we can come up with some on-the-ground solutions to solve this problem for ourselves in Jamaica. All
right, we're going to try and support that. We're going to have you again real soon. Take care of yourself and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Honesty, and you say honesty. Honesty, and you say honesty. Honesty, and you say honesty. Honesty, and you say honesty.